Saints show fight and lost to Bills, but is it enough, ladies and gentlemen? This is Nick Underhill, and I am the face of the franchise. All right, so Nicholas is going to walk us through his thoughts in their post-game kind of reaction. I believe he was live streaming during the game, so this should be his immediate thoughts to what we saw in Buffalo.
Where do we start? 31-19. The Saints had a chance. Like, this was a closer game than it should have been. It felt hopeful for longer than it should have. At some point, halfway through the game, I was like, hey, look, if they lose them all like this, I'll feel okay about the season.
9 minutes left. The Brandon Cooks touchdown is overturned. If that is a touchdown, we're winning. Like, we are leading in the game at Buffalo with 9 minutes left. The score, like 31-19, this is one of those situations where it might not fully tell the story. The Bills should have won the game. We did the box score afterwards. The Bills should have won. But this was closer to a 5, 6, 7 point game than what it ended up being. This thing wasn't like, oh, well, Saints kind of, played all right, but never really in it. They were in it. And this could have been, if a couple more things break, this absolutely could have been one of those games that comes down to the wire.
And then wheels kind of came off a little bit at the end. But it felt like a game where they kind of cost themselves. Pete Werner drops an interception. Philly's special isn't so special. Spencer Rattler, a little bit inaccurate on a touchdown pass. Kind of a story every week. One of those throws every single week. Not quite there. Not quite where it all the way needs to be. And then you have a special teams gaffe. And, hey, look, probably should be trying to block the punt, but when you have one of those every week, it hits a little bit different. And it just feels like, it's close, but it's not close enough. And that's probably how it's going to go the whole season. This is.
It's kind of surprising. I mean, it's kind of crazy because a lot of what we're seeing, a lot of what's happening, a lot of the answers to the fill-in-the-blank questions were filled in the offseason. The answer basically is, yeah, the Saints are okay, but they're not good enough to overcome these mistakes because they're relatively limited. They're rebuilding. It is what it is. And then you see this every week where it's like, yeah, they were good. They probably could have won, but they couldn't overcome a couple of bad spots. 3 or 4 things kind of went against them, and that was it. And that is the story, week in and week out. Now, I say all that to say this, and I hate to say I'm right, but I keep using this metaphor of like trying to find a boogeyman when there's no boogeyman, and that is the Saints. Like, yeah, you can say, well, Pete Werner dropped the interception, or yeah, you can point out one individual player, or fire this person, cut this person, trade this person, whatever. But it's just the sum of its parts right now. It's just the roster. It's just the team is not that good, which we knew, right? We predicted a 6-11 season, and I was higher on the Saints than everyone else. A lot of people were saying 0-17, right? So when you're a 6-11 team, a 5-12 team, a 4-13 team, and then you do make the mistakes that the Saints are making, yeah, it is impossible to go on the road and beat Buffalo. Like, you are not going to win games like that. You are not going to win games with whatever the combination of errors is. In this game, it was 2-point conversion, interception on the 3, failed 4th down, roughing the kicker, missed touchdown pass, like all those things. In San Francisco, in Arizona, in those games, what is it? It's penalties. It's 50% 3rd down. It's missed touchdown pass. It's missed field goal. It's this, it's that. They got to clean up those little bitty mistakes that bad teams make. And they're a bad team making bad team mistakes right now. In order to give themselves a chance, and in order to really give themselves an opportunity, they got to clean up the low-hanging fruit. They're not going to be perfect every game. I'm not asking them to be perfect every game. But the low-hanging stuff, like catch the passes that are catchable, no silly drops, both offense and defense, don't commit crazy penalties, don't miss chip shot field goals, stuff like that, got to clean that stuff up.
A rebuild. You don't have the players to dig you out of your mistakes. You aren't going to be good enough. That's the very definition of why you have to rebuild your roster. And I just don't think the Saints are good enough to overcome those little mistakes, those little miscues, those little missed opportunities. I thought Rattler was believable for a while in this game, and then he isn't. And then you kind of see some of the little things that aren't quite good enough. I thought Kendrick Miller played well. That's a good bright spot. Sanker plays well.
The Rattler thing is another good example of this whole thing where people are kind of jumping to, well, Rattler isn't your future quarterback. It's like, well, he's our right now quarterback. Like, he's on the field. He's starting these games. He's our quarterback right now. Is he Drew Brees? No. Is he Derek Carr? Right now, no. Right? Is he whatever quarterback will be top of the draft class in the draft? We don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But he's who we have now. Right? So this argument of, well, Rattler's the problem, or bench him, or start Shuck, or whatever else. Like, there is something with when you are in a rebuild, you do have to kind of play with the pieces that you have. And then you have to assess and figure out who's long-term, who's short-term, who's whatever, and then make moves. There are a lot of teams in the NFL that are starting quarterbacks that are not their long-term answer. Okay? They're just there. And in some of the cases, those same quarterbacks are making $275 million. All right? Looking at you, Tua, looking at you, Trevor Lawrence. So that question isn't even like a thing right now. It's not, is Rattler the quarterback of the future? Is any of that? We just have to assess what's happening now. Will they turn to Shuck at some point soon? Depends. If all things stay the same, they probably will turn to Shuck whenever he's ready, just to see. I don't think you have to turn to Shuck. I don't think it's like, well, they got to make a change. I would argue that actually making a change just for change's sake is the opposite of what this team needs. This team needs to kind of stick together, galvanize, and get a win. And if that's this week against the Giants, fine. But I don't think right now is the time where it's like, you know what? They're starting to clean up some penalties. There's finally some of the starting offensive lines kind of playing together. Okay, things are kind of getting consistent. Let's mix things up a little bit. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So, but if, on the same token, if a few games in, couple games in, couple weeks in, whatever, from now, if Rattler's struggling or the offense is stagnant and they're not building on anything, they're kind of spinning their wheels, yeah, they may turn to Shuck, and that's totally fine too.
That's a great thing. Those are the things you need to hang your hat on. But I think most of all, the thing that stands out to me from this game today is that they cleaned up the procedural stuff, and that was the only thing I wanted to see going into this game. I never thought they were going to win. I never thought that they were going to even put up a good fight, and they did for as long as I think they could. But the procedural stuff before the snap, the pre-snap penalties, I think there was one on like the first play, second play on Penning, and then it was clean. So that's a win.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, we saw the 4 penalties, but 3 of them were on special teams. So as far as like illegal shift, illegal motion, false start, whatever, virtually nothing. 1. Now, did the team gain a whole new amount of respect for Kellen Moore over 3 days in between the Seattle game and this game? I doubt it. Okay? I don't think much changed. I don't think penalties are directly correlated to the respect between players and coaches. I think that was incredibly overreactionary from a lot of people last week. What it does show is that even in weird situations, like traveling from Seattle to New Orleans to Buffalo, even after a bad week or a bad game or whatever, it shows that Kellen Moore knows what's going on. It shows that he is willing to adapt. He can identify and fix problems. He can see, hey, this has got to be better, this has got to be better, this has got to be better, and they fix it. You go up to New York and you take a look at what Aaron Glenn is doing with the Jets. He's lost. He can't identify the problems nor fix the problems. Kellen Moore has shown that he can do that multiple times because he did in week 2 as well. So he did in week 2, did in week 4, while game planning for the Bills, which I thought was a very good game plan. I think Kellen Moore checked all the boxes that people were or answered all the questions that people were bringing up after the Seattle game. Does this mean that the Saints will never have a game with penalties again? No, that's insane, right? Green Bay Packers had a ton of penalties against the Cowboys. Had blocked kicks. Stuff happens. The Green Bay Packers had one of the worst, just like how they were executing the timing of the last possession in overtime that you will ever see. Does that mean Matt LaFleur has lost the locker room? No. This is the game of football. They're professional players. They'll have ups and downs. You'll have games with penalties. You'll have games without penalties. It is what it is. But trying to attach that to some postmodern theory with a 15-page thesis on how paintball and respect and all that stuff. It's unnecessary.
Look, I know that's so pathetic, and you're probably disgusted right now hearing me say that because you're supposed to be hammering them over wins and losses, but like, I just don't. I don't have the expectation for them to go into Buffalo and win a game. And
yeah, no doubt. Anyway, this was happening in my live stream as well, where I'm saying all this and people are like, "Who cares about that? We lost." It's like, brother, we were a 16-point dog on the road against Buffalo. We just got dog walked in Seattle. With 9 minutes left, we had a chance to take the lead. The team played hard. It's the MVP on the other side of the field. Like, if you're living and dying because of losing on the road at Buffalo, you got this whole thing jacked up. All right? I mean, even honestly, if you're coming out of that game and you're like, you know what, guys? We've lost 4, but I don't see why we can't win 13 in a row. Go 13-4, get the 1 seed. If that's how you're viewing this whole thing, you're setting yourself up for a lot of heartbreak because that ain't happening. All right? This team ain't winning 13 in a row. This team is like, that's not where we're at right now. We got to reshift your focus. Would winning in Buffalo have been sweet? Hell yeah. But you lose in Buffalo, you put up a hell of a fight, it is what it is. I know it's kind of a different line of thinking because I know people want to really hammer home only wins and losses and all that, but for a rebuilding team, that just is not the lens that you should be viewing this season in.
And I want to see things get better as the season goes on. I want to see young guys make plays. We saw some of that today. I want to see the process get better and clean up. We saw that today from Kellen Moore. He can have a mess and he can fix it. And I think that's a very good thing. Is this team good enough? No. It's not even close enough. They aren't even close enough to being good enough. Was the Philly special play call smart? I didn't like it. I didn't think that was a great thing. So I think there's a lot of stuff that they still need to work on, a lot of stuff that they still need to clean up. But the big picture takeaway for me is they cleaned up their penalties, which restores a little bit of faith in the process. And I know it's disgusting. It's a disgusting thing to say. It's a disgusting way to evaluate the game. It's a disgusting thing to find a bright spot in a game that was otherwise not very bright. But
see, we're starting to really get into my realm here. We're really getting into my realm. If you've been watching the channel for the last couple of years, you know that we are the king of context. Okay? We dig into the box score. We dig into the minutia of the game, what's going on, all that stuff. We say, you know what? I see your passing yards per game. I see your ESPN QBR. I see how that we're going even deeper. We're going even deeper. And now, that's basically what you have to do because the score doesn't really matter. The win-loss record doesn't really matter. We know the team's not good enough. We know the team's not going to compete. Last year, that team, if that team would have stayed healthy, absolutely that team should have competed and could have competed for the division. Going into this year, there was no expectations for that. All right? So the idea of like, is the team good enough? Hell no. They're in 1 year of a rebuild. Of course not. The team is it's bottom of the barrel. But the what they have to do, and by they I mean the front office, and they got to build something. They got to build a winner. Now that could take 1 year, that could take 2 years, that could take 3 years. We don't know, but that's where we're at. And when that's the situation, you do have to dig into the minutiae. You have to dig into the context. You have to dig into what's happening in the process and all that stuff. So it's a foreign way of watching the game, but something on this channel we are very comfortable with. So dig in, ladies and gentlemen.
That's where I'm at with it right now. And we're going to talk about a lot of the negativity, a lot of the bad stuff throughout the rest of the show. But my one big picture takeaway was that they cleaned up the penalties. And boy, that feels nasty to say. I'm going to bring in Trip now.
Real quick, though. Nick mentioned that there wasn't a lot of bright spots in this game. Au contraire. I think there was a ton of bright spots in this game. Alvin Kamara, running the football, Kendra Miller running the football, the way we contained Josh Allen, some of that stuff. It's good to see Blake Grupe making field goals again. The way we responded after they scored, and then we marched down, we scored to go 7-7. The interception from Sanker's play as a whole was good. The offensive line, I thought, looked pretty good at times. The first time we've seen them together. And the fact that we almost had the lead in Buffalo with 9 minutes left to an overturn, I think a lot of that is our bright spots. And I'm not saying like it's the end all be all, but after seeing what you saw in Seattle, you could argue this was the Saints' best effort of the season. And to go from a complete collapse, to go from complete nightmare fuel to potentially your best performance of the season in the worst case scenario, which is going from Seattle to Buffalo, I think it speaks volumes. I think it says a lot more than the final score. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you for watching, ×2. And I'll see you in the next video.